Hello and welcome to today's book summary. We're delving into Fire and Fury inside the Trump White House. This book poses a critical question. Is Trump really suited to be the President of the United States? Let's start with a major revelation from the book. Trump never expected to win the presidency. On November 7, 2016, just one day before the election, Trump and his campaign team had resigned themselves to defeat. Polls showed him trailing Hillary Clinton by 5 to 10 points. However, on Election Day, Trump was stunned to learn he had a chance of winning. Within an hour, his shock turned into confusion about the presidency, and then, surprisingly, into a strong sense of confidence, as if he had always believed in his victory. Author Michael Wolff reports that Trump's team was not prepared for success. They viewed the campaign as an opportunity to enhance their personal profiles. Trump could start a conservative TV network. Bannon could promote alt-right views, and Ivanka and Jared could advance in the business and celebrity worlds. The unexpected win set the stage for a chaotic White House. Wolff gained remarkable access due to this chaos. As an experienced columnist with 2 National Magazine Awards and a previous interviewer of Trump, Wolff was invited to document Trump's first 100 days. Trump agreed, allowing Wolff to become a fly on the wall, observing the inner workings and listening to insider gossip. The disorganization meant there was little oversight on his access, letting him into areas typically restricted. Wolff claims to have conducted over 200 interviews for the book. Wolff's insights come from both direct interviews and second-hand sources. For some events, he provides multiple perspectives and his own interpretations. Critics argue the book heavily reflects Bannon's viewpoint and note factual inaccuracies, such as confusing Mike Berman with Mark Berman. One White House advisor dismissed Wolff as a garbage author of a garbage book. Nevertheless, The Economist's review suggests that, despite possible inaccuracies, the book effectively captures the political intrigue and managerial disorder of the White House. They commend Wolff's skill for muckraking, gossip, and cynicism, as well as his ability to expose the flaws of the powerful, making him well-suited to document this most chaotic of White Houses. In the following sections, we'll explore 3 key elements of Trump's White House: Trump's personality, the internal dynamics of the White House, and the checks on Trump's power. Let's analyze our first key point. What kind of person is Trump? The book offers numerous colorful descriptions from various sources, portraying Trump as uninformed, ignorant, and unwilling to read reports. The most serious allegations are twofold. First, he lacks basic planning and organizational skills, unable to focus on tasks. Second, his squabbling staff members unite largely because they all believe Trump is unfit for the presidency. The implication is that America relies on a group of level-headed aides to keep things running. In response to these claims, Trump tweeted that he is a very stable genius. However, Trump's election and year-long tenure in the White House suggest he possesses some unique qualities. Trump is a top-notch salesman. He'll flatter you to make a sale, but if you show no interest, he'll quickly turn to insults. He's adept at changing tactics, switching from soft to hard approaches. As a good salesman, he's constantly promoting, always finding selling points. Trump's most impressive sales skill is his personal charisma, which he uses tirelessly to convince people. He outperformed Hillary Clinton in one crucial aspect. In the final week of the campaign, Trump held 7 to 8 rallies a day in different locations, energetically promoting his brand to crowds. Clinton, believing victory was assured, worked less than half as much. It's precisely Trump's businessman image that his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, used to portray him as America's savior. Bannon presented Trump's shrewd businessman persona as a representative of the common people, implying that a tough business boss would help them. Bannon also packaged this political outsider as an inspirational new political figure. Under his guidance, Trump appeared distinctly different from traditional politicians: anti-elite, anti-expert, decisive, trusting his instincts, and relatable to the average person. If Trump were merely a businessman or a carefully packaged one, he might not be so concerning. However, The book identifies 3 fatal flaws that call into question his fitness for the U.S. presidency. First, he's excessively concerned with his image and seems to live in his own world. When external reality conflicts with his perception, he doesn't hesitate to rewrite history, even if it means distorting facts. This is why many questioned his mental state after the book's publication. 2 examples illustrate this. The first concerns his inauguration crowd size. With most celebrities boycotting the event, many Democrats absent, and light rain, attendance was estimated at a few 100,000. Trump tweeted that over 1 million attended and continued to insist on this figure, expecting others to agree. The second example is more troubling. In a campaign, a recording surfaced of Trump boasting about harassing women. He initially admitted to inappropriate talk but dismissed it as locker room banter. However, as president, he changed his story, suggesting the recording could be fake, citing advanced voice imitation technology. Such public lying is problematic. Either Trump lives in his own The Truman Show world, or he has genuine mental issues. A third possibility is that he's simply a habitual liar who, as president, refuses to acknowledge past mistakes to maintain a presidential image. Trump's second flaw is his childish inability to tolerate others outshining him. Bannon first felt Trump's cold shoulder after appearing on Time magazine's cover in March 2017, titled President Bannon. Many media outlets believed Bannon had shaped Trump and propelled him to the presidency, a view Time represented. Bannon's early influence in the White House was significant, appearing as a behind-the-scenes mastermind. Trump couldn't stand this and didn't speak to Bannon for a long time after the Time cover story. Trump's third flaw is his lack of firm opinions or convictions, easily swayed by the last person he talks to. Bannon commented that Trump has no fixed ideas, only wanting to be flattered. He's like soft marshmallow, moldable by anyone with the ability to shape him. The book cites an example from April 2017, when Trump's inner circle discussed how to respond to the Syrian government's chemical weapon attack on the opposition. Bannon, considering only practical interests, argued that the U.S. had no core interests in Syria and shouldn't risk provoking Russia with military action. Trump initially agreed, aligning with his America First campaign platform of limited international involvement. However, his son-in-law Kushner and daughter Ivanka disagreed, believing Syria should be taught a lesson. Knowing her father wouldn't grasp complex international politics, Ivanka had staff prepare a PowerPoint presentation filled with tragic images of women and children affected by the chemical attack. Aware that Trump is easily moved by dramatic visuals. Sure enough, Trump changed his mind the next day, deciding to launch cruise missile strikes on Syrian targets. In summary, the book portrays Trump as an excellent salesman with sales techniques and consumer psychology understanding. Under Bannon's packaging, Trump became a political newcomer fighting for ordinary people. However, a year in the White House exposed 3 significant flaws: his extreme concern with image, living in a fantasy world, and habitual lying, his childish intolerance of others overshadowing him, and his emotional decision-making, lack of conviction, and susceptibility to influence. These flaws make many Americans uneasy about entrusting him with nuclear launch codes. Ironically, these very flaws shaped the unique political dynamics of Trump's White House. Let's now examine the second point. What are the rules of the game in Trump's White House? The answer is simple. There are no rules, only chaos. This absence of rules stems primarily from the lack of a well-functioning organizational structure. As we mentioned earlier, Trump's campaign team never believed they could win the election and made no preparations for governing. Unlike other candidates, Trump never assembled a transition team before the election to establish a basic personnel structure and prepare for the possibility of victory. This unexpected windfall of winning the election without any preparation meant that the Trump administration was destined for chaos and dysfunction from the outset. In a well-prepared organization, the White House Chief of Staff plays a crucial role, almost akin to a co-president or the chief operating officer of the entire U.S. government, managing the president's schedule, time, and information flow. The Trump administration, however, lacked an effective chief of staff who could manage the situation, at least for the first 6 months after taking office. The first chief of staff, Reince Priebus, chairman of the Republican National Committee, was a transitional figure from the start who had no control over the president's meetings, briefings, or schedule. Trump had at least 2 other de facto chiefs of staff: his son-in-law Jared Kushner and chief strategist Steve Bannon, both of whom were constantly by Trump's side, interfering in various matters. With no one able to control the White House's daily operations or establish protocols, Trump's White House was bound for trouble from day one. The first crisis in Trump's White House erupted in February 2017, barely 3 weeks after Trump took office, involving retired General Michael Flynn, who served as National Security Advisor. Flynn had played a significant role in Trump's campaign and was highly regarded by the president, who wanted to elevate him to a high position. However, top U.S. military brass viewed Flynn as a marginal figure, even mocking him as a colonel in general's uniform, lacking the soldier's ethos of strict obedience to orders. Like others in Trump's circle, Flynn hoped to gain national fame through the campaign and then leverage it in the business world. During the campaign, Russia paid Flynn $48,000 to give a speech and arranged for him to sit next to Putin at dinner, which he readily accepted. At the time, Flynn's associates warned him that such behavior would be at least improper if Trump were elected, and it wasn't worth jeopardizing a potential position in a future administration for a small sum. But Flynn dismissed these concerns, as he never believed Trump had a real chance of winning. Ultimately, Flynn did enter the government, but was forced to resign, becoming the shortest-serving national security advisor in U.S. history. Due to his undisclosed private conversations with the Russian ambassador and subsequent public lies about them. Despite the lack of a clear organizational structure in Trump's White House, there was an unspoken rule that everyone understood: proximity to Trump equated to influence. Consequently, his advisors constantly vied for his attention, catering to his vanity, controlling his information flow, and whispering in his ear. According to Wolff's account, the closer one was to Trump, the better one could interpret his thoughts. Trump himself behaved like an energetic child. Whoever could satisfy or distract him gained the most favor. This sycophantic environment resulted in the White House lacking a fixed decision-making process. Wherever Trump's attention went, everyone else's followed. Trump relished this dynamic, viewing himself as akin to France's Sun King Louis XIV, the focus of all attention, able to bestow or revoke favor and power at will. The main difference between Trump and Louis XIV was that Trump operated with less calculation and more impulsiveness. With everyone seeking Trump's favor and proximity to him equating to power, the various factions within the administration engaged in relentless power struggles. The book suggests that Trump's White House could be divided into 3 main factions. The first faction, led by Steve Bannon, represented the alt-right. This group is more extreme than the traditional right wing represented by the Republican Party, advocating for economic protectionism and political isolationism and xenophobia. They were dissatisfied with the existing system and wanted to immediately implement their agenda. Bannon's ideal was a return to 1950s America, with his base being the white working class. In Trump's White House, Bannon represented an extreme force, bringing the conflicts from the election campaign, whether with the media or between the red and blue electoral camps, into the White House, adhering to the concept of perpetual struggle. Another aspect of this extremism was Bannon's insistence on fulfilling all campaign promises, including building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Bannon was utterly devoted to Trump. A lifelong bachelor, he spent every evening at the White House, ready to dine with Trump at any time. This was partly because Trump's young son was attending school in New York, and the First Lady spent most of her time there. Bannon also acted as Trump's mouthpiece, always ready to explain and package Trump's various bold statements. The second faction consisted of Trump's daughter and son-in-law. During the campaign, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, was in lockstep with Bannon, their fates intertwined with Trump's performance. However, post-election, They quickly became adversaries. Bannon embodied idealism, hoping Trump would shatter political norms and break Washington's policy deadlock. Kushner, conversely, championed big business interests with a pragmatic approach. The book describes Kushner as representing New York's Goldman Sachs Democrats, balancing Wall Street interests with Democratic-leaning policies. Ivanka and Kushner aimed to normalize Trump's administration, toning down his rhetoric and crafting a more traditional presidential image to deflect media criticism. They sought to steer policies towards greater openness and inclusivity, surrounding Trump with figures straddling politics and business. Their endgame? Paving Ivanka's path to potentially become the first female president. Kushner, attuned to Trump's mindset, orchestrated a presidential business advisory council with Fortune 500 CEOs to advance corporate interests. Trump, who revered these business titans, was thoroughly engaged in these discussions. While the CEO's true opinions of Trump remained questionable, one participant noted that Trump posed focused and intriguing questions. Media perceived these meetings as elevating Trump from a second-tier businessman to a more presidential figure. The third faction was the Republican establishment, led by Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and House Speaker Paul Ryan. With Republicans controlling both the White House and Congress, they saw a golden opportunity to advance their agenda. Most of Trump's major policies aligned with core Republican principles. The unprecedented tax cut bill passed before Christmas 2017 was a testament to Priebus and Ryan's efforts, embodying the establishment's goals of tax reduction and deregulation. Priebus also understood Trump's mindset, which allowed him to guide Trump in the direction he wanted. His first move was mending fences between Ryan and Trump, given their contentious history during the campaign. Under Priebus's orchestration, Ryan's meeting with Trump was a masterclass in deference and flattery, instantly improving Trump's perception and granting Ryan significant policy-making authority. Fundamentally, Trump cared little for day-to-day governance. He was more interested in continuing to put on a show and being the center of everyone's adulation. This sparked a constant battle for Trump's attention among the factions, using the media to leak various insider information and undermine their rivals. The outcome of this struggle was that Priebus resigned first, and Bannon was eventually fired by Trump in the summer of 2017. While Kushner seemed to emerge victorious, General Kelly's appointment as Chief of Staff finally imposed some semblance of order on the chaotic White House. One evening, as Kushner and Ivanka were dining with Trump, Kelly suddenly joined the meal without saying a word. His message was clear. Even family dinners with the president required the Chief of Staff's clearance. The era of blending family and state affairs was over. In summary, Trump's White House operated without rules. It lacked traditional structure, with the influential Chief of Staff often sidelined by Trump's inner circle. Everyone revolved around Trump, following an unwritten rule: the closer one was to Trump, the more power one had. Due to the competition for favor, Trump's confidants split into three main factions, each using different methods to attract the president's attention. Bannon's alt-right crusaders, the Kushner-Ivanka corporate pragmatists, and the Republican establishment under Priebus. Each vied for Trump's attention, shaping an administration defined by chaos and personality rather than protocol. Let's examine our third point. How limited is Trump's power as president? A lot of the doubts about Trump's suitability for the U.S. presidency come from worries that he might misuse his power or make serious mistakes. For example, his bragging about the size of his nuclear button raised fears about his potential to use military force recklessly. However, examining Trump's actual governing experience, as detailed in this book, shows that there are significant limitations and checks on his authority. He faces difficulties in countering the extensive federal bureaucracy, and any changes he tries to make must navigate a complex web of competing interests. American politics has some key features, particularly the separation of powers. Congress holds legislative authority, the president has executive power, and the Supreme Court makes final decisions on legal interpretations. The 9 Supreme Court justices, who are nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, serve for life. They decide cases through their collective vote. While this system is designed to provide strong checks and balances, it has often led to political gridlock in recent years. Especially when different parties control the presidency and Congress. This situation makes it nearly impossible to achieve legislative progress in Washington. Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul with over 50 years of experience watching American politics, gave Trump a valuable piece of advice after his election win, even though the U.S. president seems to have immense power. The opportunity for any new president to push their agenda is quite limited. Murdoch explained, "A president has at most 6 months to advance their own policies. After that, they mainly end up managing daily crises and contending with the opposition party." Steve Bannon, well aware of Murdoch's insight, understood that the early days of a presidency are critical for implementing new policies. Instead of sticking to conventional political strategies, Bannon aimed to take a different approach. His goal was to help Trump drain the swamp by disrupting Washington's established norms and directly challenging the bureaucrats in Congress. Bannon believed that Washington's gridlock, where meaningful reforms struggled to get through, was due to politicians being overly cautious because they were deeply entrenched with various interest groups. Unlike these insiders, Trump was a political outsider and billionaire. His lack of insider knowledge could be an advantage, allowing him to act decisively, and his wealth meant he was less influenced by special interests. In this setting, Bannon used a shock and awe strategy at the start of Trump's presidency, aiming to create chaos and then leverage it. This strategy involved using the president's power to issue executive orders, which are not subject to congressional approval, to implement new policies. However, these orders are temporary and can be easily overturned by a future president. During the transition from Trump's election on November 8, 2016, to his inauguration on January 20, 2017, Bannon carefully reviewed the executive orders from the Obama administration. On Trump's first day in office, Bannon provided him with a list of Obama's executive orders that he recommended reversing. At the same time, Bannon and an aide helped Trump draft and sign his first executive order, which restricted entry to the U.S. for citizens from 7 countries. This order was notably brief, just 1 page long. Bannon's strategy took the entire administration by surprise. Trump signed the executive order without informing any of his cabinet members, leaving the Department of Homeland Security, which was responsible for enforcing the order, unsure of how to proceed. This led to confusion at international airports, which were uncertain about how to handle travelers from the 7 affected countries. More critically, the Trump administration lacked experienced officials, and Bannon's orders seemed to season bureaucrats as if it had been hastily put together by an amateur. The fallout was immediate and severe. A federal judge quickly blocked the executive order. Trump demanded that the Justice Department overturn the ruling, while acting Attorney General Sally Yates publicly questioned the legality of the order. In response, Trump fired her. This episode was a harsh lesson for Trump and Bannon. Trying to drain the swamp and challenge the Washington establishment was a far more complex and difficult task than they had anticipated. Trump soon realized that despite the appearance of immense power, the U.S. presidency is not like being an absolute monarch. Unlike running his own business empire, where his decisions were final and a single signature could implement changes, the presidency requires adhering to a multitude of rules and navigating a web of interests. Another example of these limitations involved Trump's efforts to assist his business associate, Carl Icahn. Icahn, who had previously helped Trump with financial issues related to his Atlantic City projects, was seeking changes to an EPA regulation that required a certain percentage of biofuel to be blended into gasoline. Icahn had oil refineries but had not invested in biofuel production, and rising biofuel prices were causing losses for his refineries. At first, this seemed like a straightforward issue, changing the regulation to shift the biofuel cost from refineries to gas stations. However, when Trump directed his staff to make this change, They discovered a complex network of interests. Trump's election success was partly due to support from corn-producing Midwestern states, which benefited from the biofuel quota. Altering the regulation would upset these states and face opposition from their senators. To gain their support for any regulatory change, Trump would need to make significant concessions in other policy areas. Initially, Trump's goal was simply to return a favor to an old friend. But he soon learned that governing was far more complicated than running the Trump Organization, where he could make unilateral decisions. Governing required constant negotiation and compromise. To secure re-election, Trump could not afford to alienate key supporters from the Midwest. In summary, although Trump seemed to have considerable power, he was actually constrained by numerous checks and balances. Unlike his business, where his decisions were final, his efforts to advance policies or reward allies were limited by institutional mechanisms and conflicting interests. Bannon's early belief that executive orders could bypass Congress and bureaucratic hurdles proved unworkable. Trump quickly realized that effective governance requires navigating complex political realities and gaining support through compromise, not unilateral action. Conclusion. Now, the main points of the book have been covered. Let's take a quick recap. Wolff's Fire and Fury stirred up a storm even before its release. Major media outlets picked up on its explosive revelations, and Trump was livid. The book cites Bannon's remarks accusing Trump's eldest son, Donald Jr., of treason for meeting with Russians. Trump's lawyers tried to block the book's release, but the publisher pushed ahead, releasing it in early January. While the book is filled with sensational claims, Wolff's depiction of the Trump White House, particularly during the first half of his presidency, is indeed thought-provoking. Trump is a man with many flaws and shortcomings, which led to a particularly chaotic White House, with no rules and various factions vying for power and undermining each other. However, one thing is certain: with Bannon's exit, the alt-right's direct challenge to the Washington establishment has lost favor. With the influence of the congressional Republican establishment, the Wall Street forces represented by his daughter and son-in-law, and the new White House Chief of Staff Kelly representing order, the tabloid news about President Trump may decrease. Moreover, Trump has realized that the biggest difference between being a president and a CEO is that a president has little room for unilateral decisions. Congratulations! You've digested another book.